gang, and welcome back to Let's Level Up. I've got a really awesome Kickstarter I want to clue you guys in on. Having to get an advanced copy of the prototype and got a chance to play it with Bevan, and both of us really loved it. I'm talking about Super PACS by Brandon Patton. This game is really smart and takes a satirical view of our entire election system, really, and in the presidential nominations and just everything that's going on right now within our country. It kind of hits the nail on the head on quite a few things, and definitely something I would like to show you now. Okay, here's a sample of how Super PACS is going to be set up. Let's start with a couple things. One, you're going to want to separate all three of the main decks together. You're going to have your events, your investments, and your factions. There are also a series of the faction cards that are represented by megabucks. They have the faction back right now, but you're going to want to make sure to turn them all face up and put them there. They all have the same currency denomination. It's what's used to buy investments throughout the game. The actual events deck is actually really neat. You're going to take two events, and then you're going to space that out every time to put one of the major elections there. So starting with the House of Representatives, you have two events on top of that, and then you'll have two events on top of the Senate, and then finally two events on top of the White House. After the final election of the White House, the game is over. So the game is set to run on 10 rounds, which is really neat. At the end of every turn, you're going to flip over the top event and then handle whatever rules that it brings to the table. Some really interesting, really chaotic stuff can happen from these different events. And then each of the different elections, the Senate, the House of Representatives, and the White House, scale up, starting with the House of Representatives worth 5 points, the Senate worth 10, and finally the White House worth a whopping 15 points. Every person is going to have their own leader card. And let me just zoom in here because these are pretty good. So you can see we have the anti-intellectual. We've got Mr. God and Family. We've got the hair piece. Recognize this guy? We've got the crime stat manipulator. We've got the presumptive nominee. The big talker. The military legacy. The heir apparent. The independent. Zombie neurosurgeon. Son of immigrants. The businesswoman. The pop music superstar, the libertarian niche, the party animal, Mr. Hope. So each one of these characters is going to be dealt out to every person who's playing, and these characters have a couple unique abilities here that it's important to note. So everyone's going to have a campaign action. What you can do at the beginning of your turns is draw a faction. They're going to have a color represented here on the bottom of the card. What's their name? And they're going to have an ability here. This is how much it costs to play the ability, and this is what the ability does. It also tells you the type of character here with this symbol, that it is in fact a leader. So if you want to do Mr. Hope's big government action, you get to draw a faction, but it's going to cost you $2 to do that. If you look at the anti-intellectual, he's got a red backing, and his is called Union Busting. You discard a social card, and then you draw a faction and get 3 money, all for $1. So it's a really good faction. Whenever we were going through this game, I didn't necessarily feel like the factions were overly balanced, so you may want to be careful or let your players pick. I'm not sure of the benefits of big government over something like this, although this does have... Oh, excuse me, where'd it go? The anti-intellectual does have the limit of having to play a social before that. This did a lot for my opponents when it came to winning elections. They had a lot of money, and they had a lot of factions to choose from. And when we played Mr. God and Family, who also had a really unique thing. He's got God and Guns. And his special ability here with God and Guns is that he gets to reveal the top 2 faction cards and keep any that are red. You put the rest back in any order, and that costs $1. So that's it for leaders. So every leader is going to get a faction. I'll get the hair piece here, put it there on my player board. You're going to want to separate your bucks from your factions. The faction cards themselves are going to be the people that are going to go within your coalition. Now, these can be really any type of thing, and they have a couple of different keywords here. So you want to make sure that you have your player reference board handy, because they have to do a really good job of giving you a breakdown of what the turn order is going to be, and also what the different action types are on the back of the card here. So you can see that which of the types are going to be beliefs, criminals, financial, indestructibles, justice, media, or social. What the actions, if they're a surprise or an exploit. and then what the different stats are in each card. So essentially what's going to happen is on my turn, I'm going to take one of two actions to start my turn out. I'm going to campaign, and if the hairpiece of special abilities says you draw a faction and get $1, or I can embezzle, and that's just get $2. Then I'm going to choose my action. Now I can exploit, and I'll use one of my faction cards and exploit them, putting them into my coalition and then doing whatever the exploit text says. Or I can sneak up to 2 factions, and what I'll do is I play up to two of my factions face down. I don't get their exploit ability, but they will be going into my coalition at the end of the turn. Or I can invest. Or I can fundraise, and I can take the total number of dollars worth of my factions and then get that in money. Finally, I can use my superpowers, or I can buy investments throughout the game as long as I have the money able to buy the investments or a superpower ready to play. And at the end of each round, we're going to go ahead and resolve all the sneaks and then actually resolve the event. So when we play this, we actually, my opponent did a really, really good job of winning the different elections. But I spent a lot of time buying different investments and was able to eke out the victory just by having a number of investments. So don't sleep on the investments. There's a lot of really good points to get from the elections, but there's good points to get from the investments if you're going to be buying those. So keep an eye out for that market because it's really, really there's a good chance to get a lot of good points, assuming that players aren't taking the ones that you need. So let's go and look at some of the faction cards, and I can explain to you what here's my hand here. I can explain to you what each of these different numbers mean. Okay, so here we have a belief card. It's worth 2 points. It's going to net us 0 money, and it's going to be worth 2 victory points at the end of the game. You can see these are climate change deniers, and the artwork in this game is very, very comical, and it pokes fun at both sides. So there shouldn't be anybody who's getting their feelings too hurt over this. It is really funny, and again, it really is not afraid to poke fun at basically the entire executive system that we've got here. Their exploit is manufactured. So if I play this as an exploit, I get to draw a faction and add it to my coalition if it's red, and I get $2 from that. So this is a good exploit to play. Then I have a money faction here. It's construction companies worth 2 votes. Give me $1 and then give me 1 power. And it says no bid contract. I get $2 for each gold faction in my coalition. You can see that each of these has a certain color here. Here we have a gray color of hipsters. They're a social faction. They'll give us any money and worth 1 power. And then they have anti-mainstream. I get $2 for each faction in my coalition that is the only one of its color, including hipsters. So if I were to play these 3 cards before, I would get $6 for playing hipsters because I only have 1 of each of the colors in there. Here we have insurance companies, another green, worth 1 vote, 1 money, 2 power. And it has suspicious claim. I destroy one of my factions, and if I do, I get to draw 2 faction cards and get $2. So there are factions that can hurt you, and this would be a really good one. You use your insurance companies, destroy the faction that can hurt you, and then get benefit from that. And then we have gay rights advocates, another social. We have 2 votes, $0, 1 power, and it has an exploit of come out of the closet. Choose a face-down sneaked faction, reveal it, and then add it to your coalition. So again, you can resolve the sneaks at the end of the turn, so this is a way for you to basically exploit the sneaks that are already in play and then take one of those for your own. Really, really cool power there. So that's basically it. So on my turn, what I can do is choose one of these actions. So let's say as the hairpiece here, and remember that all likeness to actual personality is purely coincidental, with all the hairpiece here, let's just call him Donald. So as Donald, I'm going to be able to go through there and embezzle. I'm going to take $2 here, add it to my pile, and then I'm going to go ahead and choose climate change deniers as my ability. I'm going to go and exploit them. That's going to add those to my coalition, and then we're going to have a bank. All the rest of my reds are going to go in this pile, and if I start a blue pile, or a gold pile, or a gray pile, or a green pile, I'd have each of those in the different things. Or in different columns, rather. I use its exploitability. I get to draw a faction, add it to my coalition if it is red, and then I get $2. So let's see here. It's blue, so I'm going to add that to my coalition so I don't get the red there, and it's unions. So I'll be able to play the unions on my next turn. And that's my turn right there. So I use my thing. And I do have $4. So if I want to, I could buy one of these different investments here. So let's take a look at that. So investments all give you a boon for the most part. These investments, it's like Secret Society, is worth $3. Costs $3 to get it, but it says that I get, or that it is worth. Let me zoom in and we focus that. It's worth 2 points for each belief in my coalition at the end of it. So I get 2 points for everything that's a belief system. And if you remember, I already played my climate change denier. So this is going to be 2 bonus points for each of these symbols that I have within my coalition at the end of the game. That's good. So I may want to buy that one. There's also mineral rights. I get to draw 2 faction cards worth 3 or 5 if my leader is green. My leader is green because I'm playing the hairpiece. And that again, that is right there at the bottom of my leader card. Art collection. This is an interesting one. I get 5 points for every matching suit that I've got within or matching book rather, if I've got within my coalition. So for every 1 blue, gray, red, green, and gold that I have that match, or rather for every one of those, I'm going to be able to get 5 points. So if I have 2 of each in my coalition, that's worth 10 points there. And I've got to have 1 of each of the colors in order to get those points. And then finally, offshore account. Offshore account tells you to draw a faction, and it's just worth $2. So you get to draw a card, and it's worth 2, all for $3 at the end of the game, which isn't bad. So let's say I want to spend $3. I'm going to go ahead and buy the Secret Society. I'm going to put this underneath my leader card. So it's going to go underneath my leader card so people don't know how many investments I've got or what investments I've got. And then I'm going to immediately reveal the next one. So if I had more money, I could potentially buy whatever the next on the draw would be. In Super PACS, at the end of the turn, what we're going to do is reveal the next event. And this is the Globe Sun Star Terrorist Attack. And it says each player destroys a faction belonging to the opponent on their right. So every player is going to go to their point on their right and destroy one of the factions. So you probably want to get one of the ones, if it's about to be an election, whatever worth the most votes, whatever the most votes, or whoever's got the most victory points. Or if the guy's just crushing you on bonuses that they may get because of investments or something like that, you can strategically take out one of those. But this guy would die in the result of that because the player on my left would make sure that would happen. So I would lose that, and it would go to the cemetery. And then we're going to keep going until we get to each election period. And then on the election period, we're going to total the amount of votes that we have. Let me just show you this. So the amount of votes that we have, that's going to be for each one. So if we're voting on the House of Representatives, whoever wins that's going to have the total, whatever total number of votes that they have within their coalition. So if I have 5 votes and my player has 6, they're going to go ahead and get this. And then that's going to be a permanent bonus of 5 power for the end of the game, so they could really score that and win lots and lots of points. And it's basically how you play Super PACS. It's actually really, really simple to play. There is a lot of really cheap laughs in this game that Bevan and I both really enjoyed. And it's one of these things that I was surprised by the amount of strategy involved, and I was surprised by the amount of just how big of a game this was at the end of the day, and how big of a game it felt with such few components, I think is what I'm trying to say. Really, really neat. But follow me now for our afterthoughts. We're going to go back to the game room, and I can go in a little bit more about what I really like about Super PACS. Well, that's it for Super PACS. As you can see, the game has a lot of tongue-in-cheek humor. Really, really good stuff. Some low-hitting shots, some kind of highbrow stuff that'll make you think, too, if you really start to ponder into it. I think Brandon has a really, really good design on his hands. If you take the theme out of the game itself is very fun. And I think that's something very, very important. The theme adds to it. When Brandon first approached me on email and asked me if I was interested in taking a look at Super PACS, I wasn't 100% sure I wanted to play a game that involved an election system and that whole thing. I play games to get away from stuff a lot. That's a lot like that. So it's something that I really struggled with at first, but once we started playing the game and we got the cards and we're looking at them, I could see right away it's just like playing an episode of South Park. Really, really funny stuff. I think there's stuff that attacks on both ends of the spectrum, so it's not slanted to either viewpoint. I don't think Brandon's afraid to pull any punches here, or rather he didn't pull any punches. and both sides got it where they deserved it. And I think I would like to say thank you for that, Brandon. Super PACS has a lot of really, really good in-depth gameplay to it, and I was super shocked. That could almost be considered offensive, I think, Brandon. I apologize ahead of time. But I was really surprised at how much game was within the components. It was very refreshing, I think, at the end of the day. From being able to trigger exploits and surprises on enemy turns, being able to sneak cards across, and then doing things to the cards that have already been sneaked is a really interesting way. The way that you can kind of take first player from another one and grab that token by playing cards or buying investments is really smart. So, again, it's a really, really awesome system. The game itself is hilarious. I couldn't recommend it enough. And I definitely think if you guys haven't already backed Super PACS, you should consider it because it is really, really good. So the votes are in. Let's Level Up gives it a thumbs up. Check it out. It is really fun, hilarious gameplay, and it has a surprisingly amount of deep strategy and content involved within the game without being super complex. And I think that says a lot about Brandon as a developer. Super PACS is fun. Check it out now at Kickstarter. The link is in the information of this video, so check it out. If you guys haven't already, please give us a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Tell all your friends about Let's Level Up. And yeah, until next time, game on.